MS-13 is considered one of the most violent and unpredictable gangs in the United States. For years, the gang's East Coast network remained a mystery for the FBI. Everyone knew operations were happening. Incidents were rising and recruitment was expanding, but the exact mastermind behind the system was never confirmed. Every report mentioned only one code name, Silencio. Backhand index pointing right. Please like and subscribe our video. No one knew who this man was, where he operated from, or how he planned everything so cleanly. When FBI analysts mapped out years of crime data, they noticed a repeating pattern in MS-13 cases across New York, Long Island, and Virginia. The targets were pre-identified, execution was quick, and crime scenes were left without evidence. This was far from normal street-level gang activity. This was a disciplined, structured network. For years, Silencio was just an assumption. But one day, investigators recovered a teenage victim's phone in Long Island. The case was separate, the network was separate, but the phone contained a hidden, coded contact. When the digital team decoded and traced the number, it led straight into the deep East Coast MS-13 structure. And for the first time, the FBI had direct proof. Silencio equals Carlos Romero. Carlos El Silencio. Romero was not a shadow name. He was a real, active, dangerous organizer silently controlling the East Coast network. The FBI immediately formed a high-level task force, including gang analysts, surveillance experts, and digital intelligence officers. Their mission was straightforward: track Carlos's daily movements, identify operational weak points in his network, wait for the day he became vulnerable, then execute a single, solid takedown. A few weeks into the investigation, an unexpected twist appeared. The FBI began intercepting unusual communications coming from the West Coast MS-13 network. Many messages mentioned tension, disagreements, and leadership conflict. For the first time in years, there were signs of a top-level internal dispute inside the gang. The dominant figure on the West Coast was Miguel Sombra Tejada, the complete opposite of Carlos. Carlos operated in silence. Miguel worked aggressively. Miguel controlled trafficking routes, cross-border links, and financial chains. The clash of authority between East and West Coast created pressure inside the gang, and internal pressure always creates an opportunity for law enforcement. One undercover source confirmed that Carlos and Miguel were planning a private meeting to resolve their differences. For the FBI, this was a jackpot. If both top leaders met at the same location, the entire command structure could be dismantled at once. The FBI immediately began tracking the meeting arrangements. Undercover teams followed gang members. Digital units monitored cross-coast calls. The analysis team finally identified the pattern. The meeting would take place on the outskirts of Virginia, a private, low-monitoring area with minimal public access. Once the location was confirmed, the FBI finalized the operation. The plan was simple: let both leaders arrive at the meeting point, silently block the surrounding area, avoid conflict between guards, capture both leaders with non-lethal priority. On the day of the meeting, Carlos arrived first and went straight into the room. Miguel arrived shortly after, and both began negotiating. The discussion was direct, exactly like their leadership styles. Topics included: who would control which territories, who would manage recruitment, which coast would manage cross-state routes, how financial distribution would work. From the tone, it was clear that neither leader wanted a compromise. This looked less like a peace meeting and more like a pre-battle strategy session. Just as the FBI sealed the surroundings and prepared to breach, something unexpected happened. One of Miguel's guards sensed movement outside the bushes and fired a warning shot without confirming anything. That single shot changed everything. Carlos's guards instantly took positions. Miguel's guards responded accordingly. Internal tension was seconds away from exploding. The FBI commander immediately issued the breach order. Tactical teams entered simultaneously from the left, right, and rear sides. There wasn't much noise, but there was a lot of confusion. Gang guards couldn't figure out whether the threat was coming from inside or outside. Carlos tried to escape, but every exit was already blocked. Miguel moved the opposite way, but a tactical team was waiting there too. Within 5 minutes of controlled action, both leaders were completely secured. Carlos El Silencio Romero, arrested. Miguel Sombra Tejada, arrested. They were transported in separate secure vehicles, and the East-West MS-13 operations collapsed immediately. The last line of the FBI's official report stated, "Top command neutralized. Structure weakened. Network will attempt to regrow." The story stops here, but the war doesn't end. MS-13 was known as one of the most violent and unpredictable gangs operating inside the United States. Their reach stretched from the East Coast to the West Coast, and for years the FBI struggled to understand how the network operated so quietly yet so effectively. Incidents were happening. Targets were being hit, new members were being recruited, and entire neighborhoods felt the pressure of the gang's shadow. But the mastermind behind the East Coast structure remained a mystery. Only one code name kept appearing again and again in reports: Silencio. For a long time, even the FBI wasn't sure if Silencio was a real person or just a symbolic title used to hide multiple leaders. Every crime scene linked to MS-13 had the same uncommon pattern. Targets were chosen in advance. Execution was quick. Escape routes were perfect, and evidence was always missing. This level of precision didn't match the behavior of a typical street-level gang. It signaled the existence of a disciplined strategist, someone who knew how to operate a criminal network without leaving footprints. But then, one unexpected break changed everything. In Long Island, investigators recovered phone belonging to a teenage victim whose case originally seemed unrelated. Inside the phone was a hidden contact saved in a coded format. When the digital forensics team decoded it and traced its signal, the number led straight into the deep layers of MS-13's East Coast network. For the first time, the FBI had direct confirmation. Silencio equals Carlos Romero. Carlos El Silencio. Romero wasn't a ghost. He was a real, active, calculated leader, controlling major operations in New York, Long Island, and Virginia. As soon as this discovery was made, the FBI formed a high-level task force dedicated solely to tracking Carlos. The mission had 3 objectives: trace his movements, identify weak points in his network, and wait for the perfect moment to execute a single, decisive takedown. During the first weeks of the investigation, analysts started intercepting communications from the West Coast MS-13 branch, and what they found changed the entire direction of the operation. On the West Coast, the gang was led by Miguel Sombra Tejada, a figure completely opposite in personality and strategy from Carlos. While Carlos preferred silence, precision, and long-term planning, Miguel was known for his aggressive style, powerful connections, and control of trafficking routes. He had deep roots in cross-border channels and handled the financial engines that kept MS-13 running. Intercepted communications began showing tension. Deep disagreements, threats, and challenges between the East and West Coast leaders. Recorded lines captured by the FBI included messages like, "West Coast will not follow East orders. East Coast wants full control." This was more than a disagreement. It was the beginning of an internal break, a silent division forming inside the gang. And for the FBI, nothing could be more valuable. A divided gang meant both sides were vulnerable. Soon, an undercover source delivered the most crucial piece of information yet. Carlos and Miguel were planning a secret meeting, either to resolve their conflict or to draw the final lines of power. The location wasn't confirmed, but the idea was clear. If the FBI could track this meeting, they could get both top leaders at the same place, something that had never happened before. Immediately, the FBI launched a special operation code named Shadow Hunt. 2 specialized units were formed. East Coast Tracking Team, focused on following Carlos. West Coast Tracking Team, focused on shadowing Miguel. Both teams had one shared goal: find a meeting spot before the gang changed plans. The hunt lasted days. Surveillance teams followed vehicles across states. Digital units traced burner phones and encrypted signals. Analysts studied routes, behavioral patterns, and hidden communication gaps. Finally, a pattern emerged. Both leaders seemed to be directing their closest members toward the outskirts of Virginia, a quiet zone with minimal public access and large abandoned structures. It was an ideal place for a private meeting. Once the location narrowed down, The FBI began preparing the takedown plan. The strategy was simple. Let both leaders arrive. Surround the area silently. Avoid conflict with guards. Secure both targets alive. On the chosen day, agents positioned themselves hours before the meeting. Carlos arrived first, calm, direct, with only 2 guards. Miguel arrived minutes later, with a slightly larger group. Inside the building, the discussion started immediately. It wasn't emotional or dramatic. It was cold, strict, strategic. They talked about territory control, recruitment power, cross-state routes, and financial distribution. Neither man was prepared to compromise. The meeting felt less like negotiation and more like the final calm before an internal war. Just as the FBI prepared a breach, something unexpected happened. One of Miguel's guards noticed movement in the bushes outside. Without confirming the source, he fired a warning shot. That single shot shattered silence. Carlos's guards instantly moved into defensive positions. Miguel's guards mirrored them. Tension exploded before the leaders even realized what was happening. The FBI had no choice. The breach command was given. Tactical teams stormed the area from 3 directions, left, right, and rear. The confusion among the gang guards gave the FBI a critical advantage. They couldn't tell whether the threat was from rival gang members or law enforcement. Carlos attempted to escape through a side exit, but it was already blocked. Miguel tried moving toward the opposite direction, but FBI units were positioned there too. Within 5 minutes, both leaders were captured. Carlos El Silencio Romero arrested. Miguel Sombra Tejada arrested. Each was taken in separate armored vehicles and transported to high-security facilities. Within days, MS-13 operations on both coasts started collapsing. The final line of the FBI report summarized everything. Top command neutralized. Structure weakened. Network will attempt to regrow. The story ends here, but MS-13's chapter in America is far from over. After weeks of undercover tracing, call interceptions, and matching movement patterns, the FBI finally identified the meeting location. It was a private, abandoned site on the outskirts of Virginia. This was where both top leaders of MS-13 were expected to meet in secret. The plan was straightforward. Carlos El Silencio Romero would arrive first. Miguel Sombra Tejada would arrive shortly after. Both leaders would enter a control zone, isolated from outside interference. Once in place, the FBI would execute a coordinated takedown. On the day of the operation, Carlos arrived first. His most trusted members were deployed around the perimeter to secure the site. He moved directly to the designated meeting room without hesitation, aware of the careful arrangements that had been made. Minutes later, Miguel arrived, accompanied by his guards, who took positions on the opposite side of the room. Finally, the 2 leaders came face to face. The tension in the room was tangible, even in silence. They began discussing the issues that had divided their gang for months. The topics were precise and strategic: territory division, control of networks, recruitment operations, profit sharing. Despite the negotiation, it was clear from their tone that an agreement was unlikely. Both leaders were focused, calculating, and unwilling to compromise. The meeting had all the elements of a prelude to conflict rather than a resolution. Meanwhile, the FBI had silently sealed the area. Every possible exit was blocked. North exit secured. South exit secured. Side routes covered. Drone surveillance active. Tactical units in position. All teams were ready to strike at the exact moment the order was given. Just as the FBI was about to initiate the breach, an unexpected event occurred. One of Miguel's guards noticed movement near the outer perimeter. Without confirmation, he fired a round as a warning shot. That single act changed everything in the operation. Carlos's guards immediately moved into defensive positions. Miguel's guards responded in kind, taking counter positions. The internal tension in the room escalated instantly, turning the meeting into a volatile situation. The FBI commander, aware of the potential for escalation, immediately gave the breach order. Go. Execute. Tactical teams moved simultaneously from all entry points, left, right, and rear. The movement was precise, trained, and coordinated. Within seconds, the agents were inside the building. Carlos's guards attempted to resist, but they were quickly outmaneuvered. Miguel's guards also attempted to respond, but FBI units had already covered all exits and had superior positioning. The two sides exchanged gunfire for a brief moment. Despite the chaos, both leaders were able to move independently in different directions, attempting to find a safe exit. But the FBI had already anticipated every possible route. All pathways were covered, ensuring neither leader could escape. Within 5 minutes of controlled tactical action, both leaders were secured. Carlos El Silencio Romero arrested, Miguel Sombra Tejada arrested. Both were immediately transferred into separate armored vehicles and taken to high-security facilities. The arrests marked the collapse of the MS-13 leadership on both coasts. Their operational networks were broken, and their teams were left disorganized. The operation, codenamed Shadow Hunt, became one of the most significant anti-gang actions in U.S. history. The coordination, intelligence gathering, and execution showcase the effectiveness of long-term undercover operations combined with digital surveillance and tactical planning. Despite the success, the FBI was fully aware of one critical reality. Removing the top leaders did not eliminate the gang itself. As noted in the official FBI report, top command down, but the network always grows back. MS-13, like many transnational gangs, operates with decentralized structures. Even when the head of the organization is removed, new figures can rise to fill the vacuum. The arrest of Carlos and Miguel disrupted operations, slowed recruitment, and weakened the gang's control over certain territories. However, the underlying network, community influence, and cross-border connections still pose a threat. The fight against MS-13 was far from over. It had only temporarily been paused. The operation's success highlighted multiple strategic advantages used by the FBI: coordinated intelligence gathering, tracing communication patterns, monitoring movement, and following undercover sources allowed the FBI to locate a high-value target in a secure, hidden location. Controlled tactical planning. By surrounding the location silently and ensuring every exit was covered, agents were able to minimize risk and maintain full control over the scene. Simultaneous action. All tactical units moved at the same time, ensuring that neither leader could escape or coordinate an immediate counterattack. Preparation for unforeseen events. The warning shot from Miguel's guard could have escalated into a full-scale firefight. However, the FBI's pre-planned responses and training allowed them to maintain control and prevent casualties. From the moment Carlos entered the final arrests, every move was calculated. Both leaders were prevented from influencing their subordinates during the operation. The collapse of leadership not only removed the figureheads, but also caused immediate confusion and instability among rank-and-file members. The intelligence gathered during Shadow Hunt also provided the FBI with critical insights into how MS-13's East and West Coast networks operated. The agency learned about the gang's recruitment pipelines, financial networks, and intercoastal power struggles. This information became invaluable for future operations aimed at preventing the gang from re-establishing control. In summary, Shadow Hunt demonstrated how meticulous planning, combined with surveillance and tactical expertise, can successfully disrupt even the most violent and organized criminal networks. The arrests of Carlos El Silencio Romero and Miguel Sombra Tejada were not just victories in a single operation. They were a significant blow to MS-13 structure and a message that law enforcement could infiltrate and dismantle even the most secretive criminal organizations. The fight against MS-13 continues, but Shadow Hunt remained a landmark in U.S. law enforcement history. Removing the top command temporarily shifted the balance of power, proving that careful planning and intelligence-led operations can overcome even the most dangerous and elusive gang networks. The operation ended. The leaders were in custody, the networks were broken, but the FBI knew the cycle was far from over. MS-13 may rebuild, but the shadow of Shadow Hunt will remain a permanent warning to anyone attempting to rise unchecked within the organization.